Hello everyone, these are few sectioning questions from Kaplan kit, mix and yield variances. Let's start with this question. I've selected few questions which I think are good to discuss. So the question over here says, first of all, I read the requirement. What was the original plan rate per hour for the year? So for any calculation, I would definitely need the formula. And what is the formula of plan rate? Basically this then relates to uh, planned labor rate variance, right? So what is the formula for that? Revised labor rate minus standard labor rate, the whole into actual output hours. Okay, so here the revised labor rate is 70. As per this question, I'll read. An organization has recorded a favorable rate planning variance for the year of 40,000. On investigation, it was discovered that while the actual labor rates were 60 per hour, a revised standard rate for labor should have been 70 per hour for the actual hours worked for 20,000. That means the actual rate which I was talking about is 20,000, right? So over here I'll write what information I have. I have actual hours used, that is 20,000 hours. Okay, I have revised labor rate, that is 70. Then what is my standard I need to find. Okay, standard labor rate is something I need to find. Now the labor rate variance is a favorable labor rate variance which is given as 40. This is a favorable. When I say favorable, that means a standard rate is more than the revised labor rate. So in this case, the standard labor rate is more than the revised labor rate, not the actual. Because I wrote the formula, this is revised minus standard, or you can do it as revised standard minus revised. Because what I approach I follow is that usually your labor rate, which is your actual labor rate or the revised labor rate, if it is more than your standard labor rate, then the variance would be adverse. And if it is less than the standard labor rate, then it is a favorable one. So I really do not mind writing any stand. Either I can write standard labor rate minus revised rate, or I can write revised labor rate minus standard labor rate. I really do not mind. What I always see, this is my approach, what I always see is that my revised labor rate or my actual labor rate should always be less than the standard labor rate. Only then I will get the favorable labor rate variance. So over here I've got this favorable labor rate variance, and hence it standard labor rate is more, and so I have written standard labor rate over here, and then revised labor rate is equal to planned labor rate variance. Now let me just plot the numbers. So standard is something I need to find, and taking it as x, minus revised, that is 70, and planned variance is 40,000, right? One thing I didn't write is into actual labor hours. So let me just correct this information which I have written over here. It is x I'm assuming this as x minus 70, and my actual labor hours were 20,000. I've got a variance of 40,000, so it's 20,000 x minus 14 lakh, basically 40,000. So it's 20,000 x it's 72, right? So I've got this answer as 72. Another question is, a company has a process in which standard mix variance of 9 liter of output is as follows. We've been given this standard material which is supposed to be used for DEF, and the standard price as well, and a standard loss of 10% of input is expected to occur. Okay, so the actual output for the latest period is this much, and we are supposed to find the total mix variance. So what is the formula for total mix variance? And the formula for total mix variance is the actual material mix and standard, and let me write it a little closer, standard actual material mix. Then I have the variance, then I have the price, and then it's total. So my actual material mix, I'll write it for D, E, F. It's 4300, 3600, 2100, and what I'll do total of it. Let me use calculator. 4300 plus 3600 plus 2100, and this is 10,000. Now let me bifurcate this in the standard usage, in the ratio of standard usage. So I'll write over here standard usage ratio, and what is it? It is 4:3.5 is to 2.5. Okay, so the total for this also is 4 plus 3.5 plus 2.5, that is 10. We are going to use this for bifurcating this 10,000 to get the standard actual material mix. What should have been the standard actual material mix? So we'll bifurcate it in the proportion of the standard usage ratio. So 10,000 into 4, it's 4,000. 3,500. It's 2,500. Now my standard actual mix is this, and my actual material mix is this. So this is 300 adverse, 300 adverse, and this is 100 adverse. because this is my standard material mix, and I explained you before also, what I see is my actual should be less than the standard for favorable, and if it is more than my standard, whether it is price or usage or quantity, whatever it is, if it is more, if the actual is more than the standard, so it will come adverse in the case of material usage. And this is, see, the actual material used are less than the standard material that had to be used, so this 400 is favorable. Okay, so now I'll apply the price rates as well, that are standard price rates 36, 17 and 5. So the standard price rates are 9, 5, 2, I'll multiply it, 2700, this is adverse, 500, this is adverse, and 800 is favorable, right? So I need to calculate 2700 plus 500, 3200, 3200 minus 800, I get my answer as 2400 adverse. Another question is, operation B in a factory has a standard time of 15 minutes. Okay. I think before reading the question, we should ask. We should read what is the requirement. So the requirement over here is the operational labor efficiency variance. What is the operational labor efficiency variance? Let's read the information. Operation B in a factory has a standard time of 50 minutes, and the standard rate of pay for operative is 10 per hour. The budget for a period has was based on carrying out the operations 350 times. Okay, so the standard output was 350 times. And what are the actual? If I look at the actual, actually the actually the output should have been 370 times, right? So when I talk about labor efficiency variance, this is not planning labor efficiency variance. Okay, this is operational labor efficiency variance. So my actual output is 370 times. So how many hours actually should have been taken? It is 50 minutes. So I convert this. So the standard labor time should be 15 upon 60. I'll write it like this only. I'll convert it into hours. And what is my actual time? Actual time. The actual total time has been given as 80 hours. So I do not need to worry. This is per unit, or per operation, you can say. Okay, so this is the thing. So if I write the formula, we have to find the variance. So actual time minus the standard time, okay, into my standard labor rate hours were, okay, over here it is written standard labor rate hour is 10. So when you write the formula, my formula might deviate from the what the formula is written in the books. I really do not follow what needs to become first and what needs to come after minus sign. What actually I keep in my mind is, if my actual time is more than my standard time, so the variance is going to be adverse, and if the actual time is less than the standard time, it is going to be favorable. So you can write, that's the only approach I follow, because there's so many ratios in this chapter, one might get confused. So this is one easy approach which I keep in my mind. And but in case of sales, it is a bit different. It becomes opposite. So I'll explain you further. So the standard labor rate R for me is it's 10. So I'll write it standard labor rate R. So actual time, what actual time has taken is 80, and what time should have I used? So over here it is per unit, right? So it will be 15 upon 60 into my actual output, that is 370. So how many hours it should have taken if how many standard hours it should have taken if it had actually produced 370 units, right? So this is what we need to keep in mind. And now I'll get the variance. So this is 74, and this is 6 into 10, and this is 60, right? And I have this A as an answer. Now this is part of sales and quantity variance. The question is Bloom Limited was the subject for of the sorry Bloom Limited was the subject of the following press story. We need to find what is the adverse sales price variance. Okay, what is the adverse sales price variance? So one thing is good that it has said that it is adverse. So let me write the formula for sales price variance. Sorry, I got a call, that was personal. And okay, so we'll continue again. I was explaining that what is the formula for sales price variance. Now this is adverse, right? If it is adverse, then what it needs to be, that means uh, my standard selling price should have been more, or what should have been less. So in this case, when I see my if my standard sales or my actual sales are more than the standard sales, then that means they are favorable because we have overachieved the target, right? So if we have overachieved the target and my standard sales are lower and my actual sales are higher, that means I've overachieved the target, and that means that is favorable. But if my standard sales price or whatever sales volume is more and my actual sale price or my actual sales volume is less, then the ratio is going to be adverse. So over here we are going to find price variance, right? Adverse sales price variance, so it should be standard price minus now let me read if we need to consider actual or revise. So Bloom is proud to announce that it has managed to maintain its market share despite overall increase in the market size by 10%. However, the sales director, when challenged by this journalist, recently admitted having been forced to reduce the sales price by 1.5. Okay, so per branch on an average on a budget volume of 12,000 bunches. So this is my standard volume which should have been standard sales volume. Now all is not as rosy as it seems in Bloom's garden. If the standard variable cost if the standard variable cost of a bloom bunch of flowers is 20 and standard contribution gained is 5. So if my contribution, this is my standard contribution, which is equal to 5, and this is my standard variable cost, which is 20, then what should be my selling price? It should be 20 plus 5, that is 25. Okay, so if my standard selling price is 25, then what is my revised selling price? So first of all, the formula is standard price minus the revised selling price into actual sales volume. Okay, so first we'll have to find what is the revised sales. So first we need to find what is the revised sales price, right? So I would say that it is given over here that recently the journalists have been forced to reduce the prices. So the revised selling price is 25 minus reduced price, that is 1.5, and it would give me 23.5. So this is my reduced selling price. So my formula over here should be 25 minus 23.5. But now what is my actual sales volume? Again, we need to read that Bloom is proud to announce that it has managed to maintain its market's share despite an overall increase in the market size by 10%. The overall market size by 10%. Now, what should be my actual sales volume over here? So if my actual sales, my market size have increased by 10%, my volume would also increase. So I am assuming that, let's read this question. However, the sales director, when challenged by this journalist, recently admitted having being forced to reduce the sales price on an average budgeted volume. So I would assume that the actual sales volume is 12,000 plus 10% of 12,000. Basically the actual thing is, whatever it's saying is that there was an increase in the market size by 10%. So this was my budgeted, it was expected that 12,000 units would be sold, but in actual case the market size had increased, the market share, despite of an overall increase in the market size by 10%. So market share means the volume. So this should be 13,200. Okay, so it should be 13,200. Let's find out the answer. I am getting the answer as 19,800. Now it is adverse or favorable. See, this is my standard and this is my revised. Okay, correct. So my standard, ideally if I just try to take it out, 25 into 13,200, I get 3 lakh 30 as my sales volume. This was my budgeted sales volume, which should have been. If I go by the revised price, which is 23.5 into 13,200, then my actual sales volume is 3,10,200, which is less than the standard. So if my actual sales are less than the standard, then definitely I will say that this variance is adverse. Okay.